Hey everybody, this video is going to go over the PowerPoint on arguing value in the week 6 module. So if you remember back the first couple weeks of the course when we learned about claims, we learned that there are three basic types of claims. There's a claim of fact, and included in the category of claims of fact are claims of definition and claims of cause. We also learned that there are claims of policy, and then the third category was claims of value. That's the kind of claim we're going to be working with this week. So we're going to be learning how to create an argument based on a claim of value, how to argue value. So to be clear right up front, because we've talked about the word value in the context of values and assumptions. And in that context, the word value relates to our personal values or our cultural values. You know, we value health and safety and wisdom and independence and freedom and creativity, right? Remember that whole list in that chapter? Personal and cultural values, what we hold dear to us. This type of value that we're talking about, a claim of value, we're talking about the value of something. Is it good or is it bad? Is it quality or not quality? Is it worthy or unworthy? So just keep that clear in your head as we go through everything about arguing value. When we are arguing value, we are arguing about how good or bad something is. We are making a judgment about how good or bad it is. Okay? And we're often told not to be judgmental, not to make judgments, right? But if we're being honest, forsaking all judgment in life would be probably reckless, almost impossible. We have to make judgments about the world around us. We have to. We have to engage in complex judgments about the world around us. You know, we must think actively and speak publicly sometimes about people. You know, maybe they're not doing so good, they're doing some bad things, or they're doing really great things. They would do great things, so we should elect them. We have to speak publicly sometimes about policies, right? Maybe certain policies at school, certain policies at your job, certain policies within your community or within the government, things that aren't working so well, perhaps, need to be changed. We have to make judgments about people's behaviors. We have to make judgments about existing laws or the need for new laws. We have to make judgments about products. And we do this all the time. You know, I mean, there are websites dedicated to this, you know, like Yelp and Angie's List and all the reviews that you read, like on Amazon, right? We make judgments all the time. You don't want to confuse that with why we're told not to be judgmental. Because when you're judgmental, then you allow those judgments to influence how you treat people, perhaps. And that's not the kind of judgment we're talking about here, though. We're talking about thoughtful, complex judgments that we need to engage in on a regular basis. From the smallest things like reading reviews to buy a new appliance on Amazon, all the way up to making judgments about the people we elect to political offices or the laws that are currently in place. But it is necessary to engage in judgment. You just have to make sure you're doing it the right way. Okay? Another thing about making judgments and creating a claim of value is a lot of people will see it as a like personal opinion piece, right? Especially like if you're doing like a product review. You know, it's a horrible cell phone because of blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, that's a personal opinion, right? It is, but if you provide the right kind of support and you frame the judgment in the correct way, it's not personal. And in academic, civic, and professional settings, evaluations should never be personal. They're not just personal opinions. These judgments are important to a larger situation, and it's your job, the arguer's job, to convince others to see this thing in a new way, a particular way that you are suggesting. So for instance, a scientist might need to convince her colleagues that a proposed research program is unfocused so far, that work still needs to be done on the proposal before they make a decision or before they institute it. So she is showing the value of that proposal in the moment. And right now, she's not valuing it very highly. And she's trying to convince them to see it the same way. Or the faculty at a school, they need to convince the principal and the school board that a existing testing program isn't working out, that it's unsuccessful and counterproductive. So they have to put in the work to convince the principal and the school board that the testing program is bad. And that's not just their personal opinion. It's not just, oh, I like the color red. Or, I prefer baked potatoes to mashed potatoes. That's personal opinion. What we're talking about here is complex judgments. And, sometimes the judgments, the examples are in plain view, but when you're engaging in an argument of value, more than likely, you are going to have to argue the hidden value of something. For instance, you might pick a topic, or going back to one of our examples, the scientist who's convincing her colleagues that the proposed research program isn't ready yet, it's unfocused. Everybody else thinks it's great, right? Everybody else is ready to go forward with it. She's the only one right now who's like, hold up, not yet. She has to convince them that there is an issue. She has to convince them that something is not good in order for them to listen to her and then revamp the proposal. So most of the time, arguing value, you're going to be trying to convince others that there's a problem in the first place, right? So keep that in mind. It's not just personal opinion. You have a big job to do when you're arguing value, because the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that you fully understand the topic itself. She has to fully understand that research proposal as it is. She has to figure out what her colleagues like about it. If they're all thinking it's great and they should move forward with it, why do they think it's great? What do they value about that proposal in its current form? And then she has to change what they value so that they'll see the proposal differently, right? Maybe what they value about it is that it's cost effective, right? We value money. We value efficiency. That's what they value about the proposal as it is right now. But perhaps the proposal is bad in some other way. Maybe it's going to have an effect on the environment, whatever they're going to do in this proposal. She has to make them value the environment in order to convince them that the proposal isn't ready yet. It's a big job. And I think that it becomes an even harder job because so many people equate an argument of value with personal opinion. And we hold our personal opinions very near and dear to our hearts, especially these days. Everyone falls back on that, I'm entitled to my own opinion. Or I like what I like, right? You do you, I'll do me. And because we hold so strongly to those ideas, it can be difficult to get people to change their point of view about something's value. But if you can make them see that this is about much more than a personal opinion, then you make the job a little easier. At least then you have an inroad and you have a better chance of persuading them to see it from your point of view. But we have to go beyond saying something is just good or bad. That, I mean, yes, that is what the basic concept of an argument of value is. But we really have to show the readers how something is harmful or how it could help people. You have to go beyond just, is it good or bad? You have to, it's really like, so what, right? So what if it's good? So what if it's bad? There's more to the story. You have to provide the rest of the story so that they will agree that this should be done or this shouldn't be done, right? You are not required to use a claim of value for the course project, but you might want to. So exploring for topics for a claim of value, if you're interested in it, we need to choose topics that present disagreement. Why would you argue the value of something that most everybody already agrees upon? Remember, the purpose is to try to persuade. And if people already agree with you for the most part, you're not really doing any persuading. So try to find a topic that might otherwise go unnoticed. Or perhaps find a topic where you can draw out unseen layers. Go beyond finding the fault or just giving praise and discover how the topic impacts the world around it. So, it's not just this thing is great or this thing is horrible, but why should we care? What's the bigger picture here? Ask yourself, how is this thing valuable or perilous or dangerous or harmful in some way if it's not valuable? Here are some examples. So on your college campus, examine a placement policy or absenteeism or grading standards or the physical layout of the campus itself, student dress or faculty dress, and decide if there's something, that maybe most people see as a bad thing, but you can see what's good about it, or the other way around. Most people think it's a great thing, but you can see where there might be some problems. You can evaluate a marketing campaign for an organization or a corporation, their staffing policies, their slogans, their products, services, sales strategies. In popular culture, you could defend a public figure or a policy against a popular sentiment. So if, most people on the internet are saying it's horrible or this person is, just a horrible example of whatever, you could argue the opposite. You can look in the media. You can look for things that people, for people or things that seem harmless, but actually influence the world in a bad way, or something that seems harmful but actually plays a positive role. So for instance, you could look at social media. Why social media, even though everybody seems to love it and thinks it's wonderful, how it's actually doing us harm. Or, because there's also a lot of people out there who do think it's harmful, and you could take the opposite approach. This whole big group of people think that social media is a bad thing and that it's harmful, but here is why it's actually a positive thing. So that would be a great one to do, actually. You could look at a consumer trend, a musical genre, news channel, or a specific show or program, a new fashion trend, and show, if everybody is thinking that it's, a bad thing, you could show why it's actually good. If everybody thinks it's a great thing, you could show why it's actually not so great. And then, of course, there's politics. Politics might be for a much longer paper than what we're looking for the course project, but you might be able to find something that isn't such a huge issue in politics, something that's a little more contained. Um, even just a campaign ad or a speech or maybe like an education reform bill, a healthcare approach, in politics. Anything that you could look at and say, so many people are against this, but I think it's actually a really good thing. Or so many people love this, and I really don't think it's all that great. Show us what we don't see yet in any of those contexts, any of those types of topics. Show us what we don't see yet, how good or bad something is, right? You don't want to use a topic that points out the obvious or expresses an opinion that's already been stated quite a bit. You want something new, something that not a lot of people have argued yet. Academic argument really values arguments that reveal something new or a new aspect of something. Using the invention questions in the chapter can help. So, who or what does the topic harm? Who or what does it benefit or help? Does the topic promote a particular kind of behavior, a particular kind of thought process, or a particular attitude? What is its purpose or intent? Is that purpose a good one? Why or why not? And despite its intent, what are its hidden effects? So if you are thinking about a topic where you might want to argue its value, ask yourself those questions. And then you can start getting at what you want to argue about its value. Or maybe you'll decide it's not really a claim of value. That's possible as well. But I really think one of the good ones would be exploring policies in the healthcare field and exploring things within pop culture. I think those would be two really easily accessible kinds of topics for you guys. So just keep that in mind. Nothing's off limits, but I certainly want you guys to think about topics that you will be interested in and invested in. And certainly talking about the value of something within your field would hopefully benefit you, not just in terms of the essay, but in general. So keep that in mind as you're exploring for topics. Once you come up with a topic, you obviously have to come up with your claim. And because this is an argument of value, you have to know what others say about your topic. What are their values of your topic right now? What do others claim? What do others think about it, and why do they hold those opinions? And if you have a particular source, if you've done a little bit of research, just some groundwork research, what does the author of the source value? What does he or she assume about the topic? How might people express their opinions about the subject? Is it by passively accepting it, by voting, by actively supporting it in public arenas? Or do we show our how we value it because we buy it or because we experience it? How do most people express their opinions about your subject? And then what situations, media, traditions, policies, behaviors, or attitudes have kept people from evaluating the topic? If you're showing us something new, why have we not seen it before? Why have we not thought about your topic in this way yet? What is it about everything in the world around us that keeps us from evaluating that topic? And then what do you claim? What are your views on this topic, and how do they relate to others' views, right? What values and assumptions do you share with others, and how do they differ from others? This will start leading you into your claim, because remember, the claim is a claim of value. And you don't want to just try to say something is good or bad. You, remember, want to reveal something unique and particular about your topic. For example, I have here on slide 10 two sample claims. The first one is Dateline NBC is wrong about education in America. Well, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's so vague and it's not revealing anything about the topic. How about this instead? Dateline NBC oversimplifies the many complicated problems plaguing the American education system and leads us to the dangerous conclusion that bad teachers are simply to blame for the system's failures. Wow, now we know what that first sentence actually meant. When we said Dateline NBC is wrong about education in America, that could have meant 100 different things. What did we really mean by it? We really meant that it oversimplifies the many complicated problems, blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of claim you want. Be focused and specific with the claim of value. Avoid linking verbs is, was, are, were, be, have been, and avoid vague adjectives. Yes, we're talking about how good or bad something is, but that's not how you want to word it in your claim. You want your claim to be very specific and have a lot of concrete, detailed words in it. Don't just say bad or unfair or stupid or wrong or interesting. Use some more concrete words in your claim, right? So on slide 11, I have some flat statements, some flat claims, and then the alternative to it, which is much more revelatory and engaging. So instead of saying the parking situation on campus is unfair to students, and that's a good starting point, that's a good claim to get you started within your essay process, but that's not what you want to leave that claim as. Once you're finished with the essay, come back to that claim and make it more specific to what you actually did within the body of the essay. The campus parking lots breed panic and competitive hostility in students even before they get to class. So it's not just unfair anymore. We have a very particular version of unfair. Or high school education focuses too much on standardized tests. Again, good place to get us started. But when it's all said and done, let's come back to that claim and spruce it up. The rhetoric justifying standardized tests has ruined the meaning and purpose of public education. That's way stronger of a claim. Now we really know what we're talking about. Or college classes outside student majors are unnecessary. Again, good starting point. But what did we actually end up talking about in the body of the essay? Let's go back and tweak that claim. Well, now, instead of just classes outside student majors are unnecessary, we know what we really want to say is required college composition courses have made writing into a laborious performance rather than an intellectual tool. Interesting. Or energy drinks are bad for today's kids. What do we mean by that? Bad. How about Red Bull and its weird chemical cousins provide more twitch to an already twitchy generation? That's what we mean by bad for today's kids. So when you're working on your claim, it's okay if you start with a flat claim, because at least it's something to get you moving, right? To get that essay started and move you in a fairly focused direction. But before you turn in the final product, come back to that claim and make it more revelatory, make it more focused and specific and detailed, right? So I have some sample claims in the next few slides. They might spark some ideas for you, but at the very least, they do provide good examples of how to craft a claim of value. So even if you don't end up wanting to use any of the topics that are in these sample claims, which is perfectly fine, at least you will see how you should try to construct your claim of value. So some examples of sample claims in politics. Despite the open hostility against political campaign ads, they do force candidates to consider their constituents beyond the usual financial supporters. Or, the lack of a viable third party in American politics diminishes real debate about the environment. That would be a fantastic topic to do. Here are some sample claims about professional life. Massage therapy, once thought a bourgeois luxury, rescues everyday people from heavy dosages of synthetic and quietly harmful prescription drugs. So we are arguing the value of massage therapy, saying that it's good. That's a great claim. That's a cool argument. Contrary to popular opinion, an organization with many supporters and few members works more effective than one with many members. That's interesting. There's too many chiefs in the kitchen, I think. Some sample claims in popular culture. The icons and eye candy encircling the television screen on major networks distracts viewers from any one particular news story. While steering consumers away from harmful junk food, the low-carb diet craze has also diminished our collective joy in comfort food. That's probably true. That's a pretty cool one to explore. The sex appeal sold on American Idol overshadows the nuances of live vocal performance. Or microbrews have saved beer throughout the country by ending the reign of awful corporate beer and its dim-witted culture. That's pretty harsh. Minus that last part, I think doing a argument of value on microbrews would be pretty interesting. We have some sample claims about education. Despite teachers' grumpiness about text messaging, it does not diminish the English language. That would be a really cool one to do. Very relevant. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of teachers, a lot of instructors saying, make sure that you're not using texting lingo or texting language in your college work. Or you've heard people on the internet, or maybe even like older family members saying, that the way people text now, it's just completely, annihilated the English language. You could argue that it's really not. Or when students are comfortable, college has failed. Meaning it's better if students feel uncomfortable. When they're uncomfortable, college is succeeding. Struggling to word the main idea of an argument in one clear and concise claim statement helps a writer to explore the complexities of an idea and develop critical thinking skills. So we're arguing the value of getting your claim into one statement. So use those as guides for how to create a claim of value if you choose to do a claim of value for the course project. Some of you might not. But if you're thinking that this type of argument, if it appeals to you to do an argument of value, use those sample claims as possible topic ideas, but really more examples of how to word a claim, how to create the claim, right? So once you have your claim, obviously you need your support. So it's easy to pass off responsibility in a claim of value by saying that people should decide for themselves if something is good or bad. But if you're engaging in an argument of value, it has now become your job to convince people to see the topic in a particular way. And you're not trying to convince them to like or dislike something. Remember, you're trying to convince them of the value of something, that something is either harmful or that something could do positive things for us. So it's really more about just or unjust, ethical or unethical, manageable or unmanageable, practical or unpractical, prophetic or short-sighted, right? You want to get them to see it in a new way, not just make them like or dislike something. That's too easy. We want more complex arguments of value. The first thing that you want when you're trying to come up with your support is something that we call criteria. You cannot make a judgment about anything unless you have criteria. You cannot look at a certain cell phone or a car or a toaster and say, oh, this thing is really horrible. It's got zero quality. Nobody should waste their money buying this thing. You had criteria that you based that judgment on. What makes a good toaster? What does a toaster have to do? What does it have to possess in order to be considered a good toaster? You have to know that before you can say that any given toaster is good or bad, because it has to measure up to something. And that's a very important part of arguing value, is what are the standards of judgment in the first place. So like the criteria for evaluating a restaurant, for example, might be the food, the service, the cost, the atmosphere, things like that. Your criteria have to be there. You have to know what you're using to make your judgment, and they all have to be appropriate, and they have to make sense to the average reader, right? You can use analogies as part of your support, showing similarities between your topic and some other topic. You can make just an allusion to it, or you can draw out a direct comparison, or you can make it more indirect, and kind of lead the reader, reinforcing a key point. You can use testimony, right? Especially if we're doing a claim of value. You might be relying on personal experience to support your claim. If you did a restaurant review, right? That would be totally based on personal experience. You want to provide research, but you can also use the testimony, your personal experience, to help develop the argument. You can't have it be all based on personal experience, but you can use that in appropriate moments throughout the essay. But the bulk of your argument really needs to avoid too much personal narrative, not very much use of the personal pronoun I, but it is acceptable at times to include yourself in the essay if it's used in an effective manner that's really supporting your argument or advancing your argument. You can refer to literary works. It helps people understand your claim because it gives them a point of reference. It gives them something to connect to. There's a couple of essays that we're reading where there will be some allusions to literary works. Use those appeals to logic to help support your claim. Make sure you have a precise line of reasoning for each of your points. How are you getting from point A to point B in your judgment, in your evaluation? You might not need to state the premise or explain each little section of your line of reasoning. If the audience is unlikely to accept your premise, or if it's complicated, then you're going to need to support it and explain it more. If the audience is likely to accept your premise, then you can move on to the next step in your line of reasoning. So use your best judgment and maybe have other people read the draft and ask them, does this part make sense? Do you understand how I got from here to there? Do you understand my line of thinking, my train of thought? See what they say. And then, of course, you can use those appeals to value. It is an argument of value, but you can also use appeals to value. So, if you are evaluating some sort of product, if you're, discussing the value of it, one of the things that we value is, efficiency. We value workmanship. We value hard work and integrity. So you can show how a product fails in those ways. um, but they can be a really effective way of supporting your claim, but you don't want to venture too much into them because it's also a claim of value. So you're trying to stay objective about it because remember, because we're dealing with a claim of value, people can start to freak out and start clamoring to those old phrases of, well, I'm entitled to my opinion. I don't really need to, you can keep talking if you want, but I'm not really, I'm not interested in changing my opinion. When you start including the appeals to value and appeals to emotions, pathos, then people might be more likely to have an emotional reaction and cling to that, personal opinion they may get. So use those supporting methods, the appeals to value and the appeals to needs. Use them sparingly, but they can help if the moment is right. Use the questions on slide 21 to help you figure out how to use evidence and appeals to support your argument. What criteria should I use to evaluate the topic? How can I compare or contrast my topic to something else? So to what situation, person, or thing does my topic relate? This is how to use the analogy to compare something. What qualities do they share? How can I use those shared qualities to support my point? Have I experienced something that might reveal an important aspect of this topic? And how could I fit that into the argument? What claims will create a line of reasoning that leads the audience to my conclusion? And what value does the subject compromise or challenge? So thinking to yourself, again, it's not just personal opinion, and it's not just trying to get people to like or dislike something. It's trying to show them that they need to have an opinion about this thing because it's either really great and we need to promote it, or it's really bad, it's really harmful in some way. So what values does the subject compromise or challenge? Once you have figured out what kind of support you want to use and you've started drafting the argument, you might start wondering, how should I begin? How should I arrange this type of essay, an argument of value? Well, for this, don't forget, don't let the type of essay that we're writing or working with distract you from the basics of basic elements of essay writing. You still need an introduction that grabs your reader's attention, introduces the topic, and leads to a thesis statement, a very clear, concise thesis statement. That thesis statement should specify your very focused topic and your stance, your opinion, or your stance, your view on that topic. You still need to figure out the best way to organize your main supporting points, and you need those transitions to help you from paragraph to paragraph and within each paragraph. So arranging an argument of value doesn't require any special type of organization pattern. It is very much like a normal essay where you simply have to decide, is there some sort of time order, right? Is there some sort of sequential order that I should follow? Or is it more, this is my first main point because it's kind of my weakest, and then this is my next main point because it's a little stronger, and then this is my last main point because it's the best part of my argument, the strongest part of my argument. So are you doing it in that way? Just make sure that you are thinking about all the things that go into organizing an essay in a proper way, regardless of what type of essay it is. This is an essay that's arguing value, but you still want to think about all of the normal things you would think about when writing an essay. Okay. Once you have a draft, remember when you get into the revision process, do global issues first. Make sure that you have a solid foundation that you're working on. Don't worry about grammar and mechanics and spelling. Make sure that you have a true claim of value. Make sure that it's revelatory, that it's showing us a new aspect of your topic. What hidden value does it bring to life? What is important? Why is it important that others would accept your claim and act accordingly? And then work more towards the global. Then look at the paragraph placements, look at your cohesion, look at your topic sentences, then look for style. Have you used a lot of cliches? Have you gotten repetitive in, for no reason in certain parts? And then look at those sentence level errors. You are required to have sources, to do some research for the course project. So make sure that you've used sources as a means of discovery, that you have evaluated your sources, right? That you have integrated the ideas from your sources smoothly into your essay, and that they're documented appropriately. You will get a chance to revise. So, it's not like it's, you only get one shot and it better be perfect. You get a chance to revise, but the more you think about these things, the more work you do before I even see it, the easier it's going to be for you to make those final touches and submit the final project. So just remember that when we're arguing value, we're not just talking about our personal opinion. Arguments of value reveal something new or unique about a topic, and you're trying to change the audience's mind about that topic. You're trying to make them see that something they normally see as good, great, fantastic is actually harmful in some way, or not so great in some way, or vice versa. Choose your topic wisely. Make sure you have a revelatory claim, and make sure it's not a flat claim, right? Go back and tweak that claim and make sure it is focused and detailed. Make sure you've got enough support, and make sure that you've thought about your criteria. Think about the arrangement and the organization. Consider the audience and voice that would work best. Like, who is your audience? What tone should you use for that audience? And be sure to attack the revision process effectively. You're going to be looking at 3 sample essays that are all claims of value. They're all arguing value. You're going to answer some questions about each one. There'll be a follow-up video lesson for those essays. But if you have any questions right now about claims of value in general, or how to argue value, please let me know. Once again, you're not required to do a claim of value for your course project, but if it's something that is intriguing to you, you're thinking that you want to go this route, please let me know if you have any questions or want any further information on claims of value and how to argue value. Otherwise, you guys are free to move on to the sample essay exercise.